Today we're going to be using the Santa's treasure bag to make some really quick gifts. This bag was designed to have lots of little components that you could put together quite quickly to make Christmas presents. That was the whole point of this bag. There's also a lot of beads that you can do other projects with, and we've already done one and we'll do more. But with this particular video, I would like to explore some little projects we can do very quickly and make some Christmas gifts. So that's what we're going to do today, and I hope you enjoy the video. Of course, you do not have to have the treasure bag to do these particular projects. You can use this as a techniques video and use something you have on hand in order to make some of the same projects, or basically the same projects we're going to make. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so as I said, this bag was designed so that you could make really quick, easy Christmas presents very affordably. So you spend $35 for the bag and you can make several gifts out of this if you just use the components themselves as your design. So you have some really cute little things that all you have to do is pop onto an ear wire or pop onto a chain or something like that. We're going to start with these 4 components that are in your treasure bag, and these are just the little twisted drop. It's kind of on a twisted post, and you have 2 red and 2 green. Now, the obvious thing to do would be to just grab an ear wire, open the ear wire, and pop one on. Now, the issue you have with gold plated anything is that the gold are so many different colors. So I tried to pick one that was as close as I could to this gold, and it still isn't really the same. So we will discover other ways to make it less obvious that you have different colors of gold. But for this one, to make it simple, I'm just going to open this ear wire, and just open the loop like this, and I'm just going to drop these on here. Now, close the ear wire the same way you opened it. Just twist it open, twist it closed, and you have a component. Just make sure that the front of your stone is towards the front of your ear wire, like this. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other. Of course, this will take you about 1 minute, and you have a gift. You can put it in a pretty little box, and you've got a gift for somebody that they will absolutely love. I mean, who doesn't love a pretty little petite pair of earrings like this? Pretty little drop. Of course, you could make them more dramatic by putting on a couple of little jump rings before you put on your component. Put your component on a jump ring, and then put another jump ring on, and then put that jump ring into your ear wire, and you have a longer dangle. So you can do it that way too. You could also use what I like to do, and I'm going to show it in the next example here, is sometimes I like to just mix colors of metals so that it's very obvious contrast, purposely done, and you don't have different tones of gold obvious together, like you just couldn't match them. So what I like to do, and we'll make one of these real quick, is I like to put a silver wire on, bring in some silver and some gold tones together, and that way, as it flows, it blends together. It looks very Christmassy, and it looks like it was done purposely. So what I've used for this one is I have used one of the 8mm round electroplated star pattern beads and a head pin, or eye pin, excuse me. Eye pin has the loop at the end. Head pin is like a nail. It has a little flat head or a ball head. And then I'm going to use the green drop, and I am going to use 2 8/0 seed beads that are the galvanized permanent finish aluminum to bring out somewhat of a gold tone or silver tone in this, so that I can blend it all together. Then I am going to use a silver colored ear wire and jump ring so that I can blend my colors together. So I'm just going to grab my 8mm round bead, and I'm going to slide it on. First, I'm going to put on an 8/0 seed bead, excuse me. bring in my silver down there a little bit. So I'm going to drop an 8/0 seed bead on, then I'm going to drop on my little gold pattern ball here, and then I'm going to do a wrapped loop. So I want another 8/0 seed bead on top of that so that I have silver on either side of my gold. I have a gold head pin, and that just kind of blends things together. I'm going to place my round nose pliers right on top of that 8/0 seed bead, and then I'm going to, while holding my pliers parallel and horizontal to the bead mat, I'm going to bend the wire over the back prong of the plier. And then I'm going to turn my hand vertical, and I'm staying towards the front of my plier so that I make a small loop. And then I'm just going to bring this extra wire over the top of that back prong, or the top prong here. Then I'm going to turn my wrist a little and kind of force that down and force the extra part underneath the pliers, just like this. So I've just basically brought it underneath my plier. And when I take my plier out, I have a little loop, like this. Now I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to hold on to this loop. I'm going to arrange it to where my extra piece of wire is parallel to the pliers, so the same angle. And then I'm going to put it in my left hand, actually, and I'm going to start to wrap with my right hand. So I'm just going to wrap like 2 or 3 times, depending upon how many I can get on here. So I have about 2.5. And then I am going to grab my flush cutters, and let's get you in closer here, and I am just going to cut really close to that 8/0 seed bead. And this is what I have. Now I'm going to take my little needle nose pliers here, and I am going to push that extra piece that's sticking out down into the coils that I created when I wrapped it. Then I will straighten out the 2 sides, making sure that my loops are the same direction, like this. And then I am going to grab I have like a 4mm jump ring here, and it's the bright silver tone, and I'm going to use it to bring in some more of the silver on the bottom of the component here. Oh, come here. And my opening is right here. I've placed it in my flat nose pliers. I'm going to use my chain nose pliers just to twist it open like that. I'm going to put it on the bottom of my component, and then I'm going to grab my pretty little drop and put it on here. Oh, really? Okay. Put that one on. Something is up with the end of this one. It's just a really tiny, it is the loop, but it's really tiny. So I could have used a skinnier jump ring if you run into that issue, because I'm using a pretty heavy gauge one, or I just picked up a different one. But if you don't have that option, then just use a smaller jump ring. And this is what we have here so far. And then I am going to grab my ear wire, and I'm going to open it, twisting it open, find the side that's open, twist it open, make sure that you have your little component facing forward, and drop it on the ear wire so that it's the proper direction when you wear it, and this is what you have. Now, isn't that cute? And I blended the colors together so that I didn't have to worry about my gold matching perfectly. It just didn't have to. So, let's see. Yeah, just like this. And I have another one here. So put it together. And that is a really pretty gift too. I mean, just really festive, really pretty. And right now, within 5 minutes time, you have 2 gifts. Now, of course, you can do the red ones this style too if you'd like, or we can do something a little bit different with that too. So let me think of what the next one we can do, and I'll show you. I have decided to go ahead and make a necklace with one of these little red components here. You could do it with the green ones too, of course. You could make 4 different necklaces if you do it this way. So what we're going to be using is I'm going to be using some beading chain. Now you can use regular beading wire and just bead the entire length and crimp the ends with the clasp. That would work just fine too. Or you can use some beading chain like I am going to. You're also going to need, I'm going to use about 7 of the 6mm round half man-made red beads that are in the treasure bag. I'm also going to be using some 8/0 seed beads. This is a galvanized permanent finish Toho, so I can bring in some gold. I'm going to mix gold and silver components. I'm using a silver eye pin, and I'm going to use some of the clear cuboid crystals. You could use a 4mm bicone. You could use whatever you'd like, a little rondelle, anything. If you've already used your cuboids, you can use something else. Now, otherwise there are some in your treasure bag. I'm also going to use some little crimp ends that have a clasp on it for my beading chain to end it. There are several other ways you can end your beading chain if you do not have any of these. I have some online in my store. However, you can use several different things to end your beading chain. Watch Beading Chain 101 and that will show you several different ways if you cannot get any of these. I also have some individual little ends just without the clasp and all this stuff together, and you can use those and put on a jump ring and you're clasping that way too. So there are other ways to do this. But I just want to show you basically that you could make 4 little necklaces. So we're going to first make our focal component here. I'm using my head pin, and I'm just going to make sure that the loop on my head pin is closed. So I can see that it's slightly open. So I'm just going to twist it up and then twist it back in until it's closed tightly like that. I'm going to pick up an 8/0 seed bead, and then I'm going to pick up one of my red 6mm round beads and an 8/0 seed bead, and then a cuboid, and then a 8/0 seed bead, and 8/0 seed bead. So this is what we have. Then we're going to grab our round nose pliers, and we're just going to make a loop and then wrap it. So place your pliers right above the 8/0 seed bead on your wire like this. Place your pliers parallel and horizontal to the bead mat. Bend your wire over the back prong of your pliers and then position your hand so that your pliers are now vertical. And then bring this extra wire over the top of the prong of the plier here. And as you do that, turn your wrist and force that extra piece of wire underneath the plier so that you have a little loop like this. Mine's a little off center, so I can just put my plier back in there and move it over. And this is what I have. Let's get you a little closer. Now I am going to grab my flat nose pliers, or you can use your chain nose, it doesn't matter. And I've magnetized a jump ring on there. And then I'm going to hold it in my hand like this and move this wire so that it is in the same angle as my plier here. And then I'm going to switch hands. And I'm just going to wrap this with my other pliers a couple of times. And then I'm going to cut this, if I can find my flush cutters. There they are. And cut this down. Now, I didn't leave a lot of space for me to wrap that, so I'm right on top of that seed bead, and I just have to make sure that I don't break the seed bead as I tuck my little tail end in here. So I'm just going to tuck it the best I can and be careful not to break my seed bead. There we go. Now I'm going to straighten up my loop because it's a little weird. So I'm just going to put my pliers in here and straighten it up. Then I'm going to use my flat nose pliers. And what you need to do is this loop on the bottom needs to be flat or horizontal against the bead mat. This one needs to be vertical. So we're just going to turn this one. You need to hold on to the bottom one and then turn the top one. And then just straighten out everything you messed up. So this is what it should look like. When I lay it down, this one is vertical, up and down. This one is flat. And then you can just, of course, doctor it up a little bit so that it looks nice. And then I am going to grab my small jump ring here. I have this one in gold tone. And I'm going to find the opening on it, and I'm going to open it with my pliers. But I just keep picking up all kinds of stuff in my pliers here, because I'm designing and I have stuff everywhere. So, open it like that. And then I'm going to put it on, actually I want to put it on the bottom loop. So this loop here. Not the one we turned, the other one. And then I'm going to drop on my component, my little pretty drop, and then I'm going to close this. Now I can lay this back out again. And that's what that should look like. Let's get us in the camera a little bit better. Just like that. Now I am going to grab my beading chain. And if you would like, you can put a little bit of super glue or some kind of glue on the end and let it harden so that you can string your beads a little bit better. I have found that I'm not really having issues with it, so I'm just going to do this without worrying about that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my component on my beading chain and center it. We'll have to center it a couple of times, but I'm just going to put the end of my beading chain together here. Let me back off so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to center it like this by holding these two ends together. Turn it over. And now I can start beading. And I am going to pick up an 8/0 seed bead. And I'm going to do that on both sides of my chain. So I've worked in the gold right next to the silver here. And then I'm going to pick up a cuboid. And then a red seed bead, no, a red 6mm round. These 6mm rounds match really well, the red ones with the red drop. They match really nicely, so it works out really well. The green ones are a little bit different color than the green components, so you could always, if you can see that, it's a little bit different color. It's not terribly off, but it is off. So you could use just some of your clear beads. You could use something you have in your stash. You could doctor it up somehow and still make the same kind of components and have 4 necklaces to give away also. So I always, with any kind of bead bag, my own, somebody else's that they've made, whatever, I always mix some of my own stuff in there so that I can have a bigger variety. The bag is just kind of a jumping off point. It's not a kit per se, it's just a jumping off point. You have stuff in there to work with, but you can add stuff to it. So then I'm going to put on another 8/0 seed bead. And I'll do the other side the same way. I'm going to go ahead and string this up a little bit, and then I'll show you what I have. Okay, so this is what I have. I did my 8/0, a cuboid 8/0 and a red bead, 8-0 cuboid, 8-0 red bead, 8-0 cuboid, 8-0 red bead, and then I put on an 8-0, and then I dropped a size 2 beadle-on crimp bead down on this side, and I did it in silver. You could also do it in gold if you'd like. And we're going to stabilize the center with that. Now, you don't have to. You could also drop a size 1 down and just squeeze it instead of doing the procedure I'm going to show you how to do next. But these actually, when you use a size 2 actual tube instead of a little round one and squeeze it, it stays better. This is going to stabilize my centerpiece so that it doesn't move all over my chain. However, if you want to just leave it like that and put your ends on without securing the focal area, you could do that too. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this down so you can see it better. I've dropped one on either side, the size 2 crimp tubes, and then I'm going to put my ends together. And if you cut just a little bit extra, you can make sure that if it's off center, you can cut your ends and still have enough chain to get your length. So, because you'll always get it a little off center. So I'm going to center it the best I can on my beading chain, and then I'm going to grab my crimping tool. Now this is a standard crimping tool from Beadsmith. This works really well. If you're having problems crimping, it's probably either you're using a cheap crimp tube, which you can fix by using Beadle-On, or Beadsmith. Beadsmith crimp beads are good too. Or it's your crimping tool, and you need to get a good crimping tool. The Beadsmith original crimping tool works perfectly. I've used this one for about 12 years, and it never fails me. Some of them I bought, and they literally do not crimp the bead. So that could be your issue too. So many people have crimping issues, and that could be your issue. So what I'm going to do now, just so that this doesn't move, is I'm going to grab some kind of little clip here. You can use a potato chip clip. That's what I have here, is just a little like potato chip clip. Or you can put a little piece of tape on there too, but I don't like tape because it's messy. And I'm just going to clip this side right above that crimp tube. And then I'm going to grab my crimping tool, and in the divot closest to the handle, you can see if you close it, it has kind of a round side and kind of a crinkly side. I'm going to place it in that divot first. And I know my hand's in your way. I'll show you in a second. You have to kind of balance it in here, and it's kind of a balancing act because everything wants to move when you're doing this particular type of crimping. So I've got it in here. I'm holding on to the chain. I'm pushing just slightly on the beads, and then I'm going to squeeze. Now, this is what I have. Let me get you really close. This is what I have. Now, you can see I have 2 little tubes and kind of a fold in the middle of that crimping bead. So now I'm going to go into the first divot on my crimping tool, right here, the one closest to the tip. I'm going to place it in there with the sides touching the crimping tool. So the 2 little tubes touch the crimping tool, then I'm going to squeeze. And now I have a secure crimp. But when you're using it on the end of something like this, you may want to make it, reduce it down and make it even prettier. So you can just put it back in that first divot and just kind of rotate it in there and squeeze it so that it's nice and tight around that chain and it's pretty, like this. Now, I'm going to take this side off. I'm going to see how well I did keeping this centered here. Look at the ends of my chain. And center that back. And I did get just a slight bit off. So let me show you. If I push it up against that bead, this side is a little bit shorter. So that's why I say you may want to cut a little bit of extra beading chain. I'm not too worried about the fact that I didn't cut a lot because this little guy has an extender on it. But if you don't have an extender, then you may want to make sure that you're a little bit better centered than I am. So now I'm going to do this side. I'm going to make sure that my beads can move a little bit, so I'm not going to do it real tight against those beads. I'm going to grab it in the second divot again, and then I'm just going to make sure there's a little tiny bit of slack, and I'm going to squeeze. So now my beads, they're not loose. It does hold this together, but they're not so tight that they're distorting my chain. And then I am going to, so I leave just like a millimeter of space. Not, see, you can see that little bit of space. My beads would slide down, just a little bit of space. And then I'm going to put it in the second divot, or the first divot closest to the tip of the pliers. Again, I'm positioning it to where my crimp bead, the little tubes that have formed when I did my first crimp, are touching my tool, and I'm going to squeeze. And now I have a nice, secure, pretty crimp. And again, I can put it in this first divot and just kind of rotate it around, squeeze it tight, make sure it's pretty. And now I have a stable focal. It's like this. And it's really pretty. Now all I have to do is go to the end of my chain here now. And I'm going to put my ends together here, and then I'm going to cut these even since I got a little bit off here. So now that those are cut, I can grab my little ends here. So this is 2 pieces. I have a lobster claw on one side, kind of small, so it makes it a little difficult to deal with here. I've got my lobster claw and my crimping tube on this side. Oh, come on, you little turkey. There. And then I've got my extender and a crimping tube on this side. So I am going to put my lobster claw on by, the best way to do it is grab your crimping tool, place this tube in the second divot. I like to do it on the flat side of the plier here so I can see that I'm at the very end of the tube here. And then I can pick up my chain, drop it in here until I feel it touch the bottom, and then I can squeeze. And this is what I have. Now I'm going to position it in the first divot on my tool here. Make sure that I have the 2 little sides touching, and then squeeze again. And now I have my end. It's crimped on there, it's tight, and it looks good. Everything's nice about it. You can always doctor it up a little bit. These are a little bit different metal, so you don't want to do too much squeezing or you'll break them. So just leave it after you do the first one without doctoring it up too much. If you absolutely have to, then do. But I even felt when I did that one time that it kind of squeezed weird. So just be really careful with these because, like I said, they're a little bit more resistant to being worked too much. So we've got that end. And we'll do the same thing on this end. So I'm going to grab this. And you can put a little crimp bead on the end. You could slide a clamshell down and put a little crimp bead on and close your clamshell over it too. And like I said, if you watch Beading Chain 101, you will see that how to do that and a couple other methods. So I'm going to put this again in my crimping tool where I can see that it's at the very edge. So you want to be flush with the crimping tool or even a tiny bit recessed. I mean a tiny bit. And then squeeze. And this is what you have. Now I'm going to position it in the first divot and squeeze again. Let me see how pretty that turned out. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it'll do. There we go. Now I have finished my ends, and I can make a little, some kind of little dangle for the end of that extender if I want, and I'll probably do that. And then I have a very pretty necklace. Let me show you. I'll get you in so you can see it. Just really pretty. Fast, easy, and because you have 4 of these components and lots of beads, you can make several of these. And like I said, you do have enough beads to just put this on regular like soft flex or beading wire, not regular wire. You need bead stringing wire. This is Beadalon 7, but you could use Beadalon 49, would be even more flexible and better. And you can just go ahead and string the entire length, crimp the ends for your clasping, and you still have the same design. You just didn't use the beading chain. So don't feel left out. If you don't have beading chain, can't get beading chain, you can still do this basic design any way you want using any beads you want. So that is another idea for this little component. Okay, I want to show you really quick that to work my gold in again, I used a little gold jump ring, and then I just made a tiny little beaded component to put on the end here of my extender. So I used, if I can hold it so you can see it, I used a silver head pin. I dropped on an 8/0 seed bead in the starlight color, and then one of my red beads, and then another 8/0, and then I just did another wrap, just like I showed you how to do this one, and then I put it on with a gold jump ring onto the end of my necklace. And now my extender has a really pretty little component to it too. So, of course I have this upside down, there we go. So that is one, like I said, idea. And we're going to move on and do another quick idea. Okay, we're going to do one more beading chain situation here. And of course, like I said, with these, you do not have to do them the way I'm doing them. You can do them on bead stringing wire too, and just bead the entire back instead of having the chain. You can connect it to some of the chain that is in the bag. However, the chain in the bag, in this particular bag, is a little bit bigger because I wanted to make charm bracelets with it. I should have done one big one and one small one, but I didn't. But hindsight is 20/20. Anyway, you can use anything that's in your stash chain-wise too. You could use a smaller chain, regular chain instead of beading chain. You do not have to do it the way I'm doing it. These are ideas, inspiration, and then you just take off on your own and do it the way you want to do it. But I wanted to do one more on silver chain with this component, this gold component, some more starlight, and we have 5 of these little drop crystals. I want to use those too. And then this time I'm going to go ahead and use a clamshell end so you can see how to do that to end your beading chain. You're also going to need, I'm going to use some size 1 for the ends for my clamshells, but you can also use a size 2 and just crimp it on just like I showed you in the last necklace. This one we're just going to squeeze on. It's a size 1 Beadalon round crimping tube, and you can most definitely use a size 2. Crimp it the way I just showed you in the other video. So this is another really quick, fast, easy project that you can do. I have 17 inches of beading chain, and again, you could use beading wire. Just bead the sides of it all the way up. And with these really delicate components, I think they just look really nice on beading chain. Again, you can use a real fine, regular cable type chain too. So I have this on here now, and I am going to straighten it up. Now, I'm going to do lots of stringing, and I'm going to use several of the components several times so you can see different ways to use it. So I realize you're not going to have as many of the beads as I have to work with in your bag. However, I want everyone to see that you can use different techniques with this. So that's why I'm doing this. I had someone tell me that she did not feel like this bag was you could use for stringing just because they're small doesn't mean you can't use them for stringing. You can most definitely. I mean, seed bead necklaces and things like that have been around forever. You can use any size you want for stringing. The components are small in this one. Things are dainty because right now a lot of the trends are very minimal, very dainty things. And if you're making gifts, these would be popular with younger people. If you're making something for your niece, your granddaughter, your whatever, it works out really well. Plus, I want to put different components in every bag so that you can have different, you don't want it to be the same every time you get a bag. So now I put on one of my drops and I put it narrow side down. And I'm going to do that on this side too. And then I'm going to pick up, I think, 2 8/0 seed beads on the chain. Another drop. And then I'm going to put big side down first, this time the narrow side towards the end of the chain here. So I'm going to drop it down the opposite direction that I did last time, just like that. I'm going to get you in closer. It's kind of dark in here tonight. It gets really dark really early in Colorado here, and my lighting is just not the greatest. So I apologize, but get you in close so you can see. And then I'm going to pick up 2 8/0s on this side and repeat what I did before. And you can stabilize this focal if you want or not. It doesn't matter. I think I might stabilize it with some of my size 1 crimping beads here. Just because, why not? And then I have, that's it. That's what I'm going to put on there. I think that's really pretty. So I'm just going to stretch this out. Make sure it's somewhat centered. And then I'm going to drop one of my size 1s on either side. If you have size 1 rounds, it's easier because you can just squish them on there and they form on there nice. However, they can release, whereas the other method I showed you doesn't release. So, you know, it's up to you. Now, we're going to center everything. I'm going to get this in camera. And I am just going to grab one of my little pliers, grab that crimping bead, and just squeeze it. And then I'm going to straighten everything out. I'm going to make sure there's just a tiny bit of space between this one and the 8/0 seed bead so that my focal doesn't get all stiff, and squeeze that one. Now it's stabilized. It's not going anywhere. It's like that. As easy as pie. And then on this side, I'm going to make sure my chains are the same length because, you know, you can always get them off. Actually, I did pretty good this time. They're pretty darn close. I will cut just a tiny bit off of this side. And then I am going to use a clamshell to show you how to do this. Now, you can use a little glue in this if you want. I'm not going to because it gets everywhere. And I just don't want to deal with that while I'm on camera. So I'll tell you when and how you can use it. But I'm going to drop one of these clamshells on. So this is the clamshell beading tip. Let me get you close so you can see it. This is what it looks like. Looks like a clam. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it on the chain from the bottom side. So the side that doesn't open like a clam. You're going to drop that side on first. Just like that. Then you're going to grab one of your, you can either use a size 2 or you can use a 1. I'm just going to use a 1. Size 2 would actually be more secure. But if you use glue, a size 1 works really good too. I'm going to grab this little size 1 and put it on my beading chain. And let's get you in the camera, or get the camera here, whatever. Get it straightened up. And then we're going to just make sure a little bit of the chain is hanging out. And we're going to squeeze this crimp tube nice and tight. And that should all fit inside your clamshell. If it doesn't, you can trim down your wire a little. But it's nice to have a little bit of chain sticking out. It's less likely to slip off. So then you're going to bring up your clamshell like this. And then you have your crimp tube right in there, and you're just going to put a drop of glue in there. And then you're going to close it. Just like that. And there's your end. Now you can put a jump ring and a clasp on there. So I'm going to go ahead off camera and do the other side, and we'll come back and put a clasp on it. Okay, so I have both of my ends prepared. And you can see this is a little bulkier. It works great. It's easy to do, but it's a little bulkier. Not quite as pretty as when you use some crimp tube ends like this one. If I get it in camera, you can see. But it still is very effective, and like I said, really easy to do. And cheaper. These little ends, you can get them quite cheap. So, anyway, we're going to pick up one of our endings here. So I have a small jump ring and a lobster claw in gold tone, so that I can incorporate more gold here on the end. And then I have like a 6mm jump ring, and I'm going to put the 6mm jump ring, it's heavy gauge so that it's nice and strong. I'm going to put it through this loop, and then I'm going to close it. Close, you little dude. Okay, so I've got that one on, and let me back off. You can't see anything I'm doing. Oh, I'm sorry, that's rude. And then I'm going to use one of these little jump rings. Open up a little jump ring, put it on my lobster claw, put it on my clamshell end. I think they're called bead tips, but they are clamshell bead tips. And then that is what I have for my ending. It looks nice, and I have a really pretty little dainty, gorgeous necklace that anyone would be happy to wear. And I think that getting this for a gift would be really nice. So that is another idea. Quick, easy, fast, fun. And we're going to do a couple more. Okay, so here's another idea with the beading chain. Again, you could use regular chain, a tiny little cable chain. You could use beading wire and bead all the way. But with beading chain, you have 5 of these little snowflakes with the little crystal in the middle. You also have them in silver tone. They're a little smaller than this one. This one makes a great pendant. I put on some galvanized permanent finish aluminum this time, bringing out the silver because I put it on gold chain. And I put on some 8/0 seed beads and a cuboid and 8/0s cuboids, and then I did a size 2 crimp like I did with the first necklace and stabilized it. As you can see, it has movement. I don't stabilize it really tight against the beads, but it keeps it from going all over the place. It stays in the center of your chain. Now I'm going to end this with one of these little crimp ends. They look like this, and it has a little tube. I put it in my crimp tool. You can see the flat side here is slightly recessed into the first divot there. I just put my beading chain inside there and squeeze. Get you close, and you can see what this looks like. And now I position it sideways, just like you would a regular crimp tool or tube, and then position it towards the end of it, making sure that the 2 little tubes that I created with the first squeeze are sideways, and it just flipped. Didn't do that very well, did I? And then squeeze again. And that's what that looks like. And now I can put on a jump ring and a clasp, and I'll go ahead and do that, do the other side. We'll finish this one. I have one more idea for some of these beads. See, what I'm trying to show you is that you could make, with this alone, you could make 5 different necklaces, 5 different presents if you have a bunch of little granddaughters or whatever, friends. They're adorable, and they can be worn more than Christmas. They could just be a wintertime type of theme here. So I will lay out everything, but you can make a whole bunch of presents, and you've only spent a little bit on your findings and $35 on the bag, and you've got a ton of presents. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go ahead and finish this one up. I have one more idea with some of the beads in the bag to do with beading chain, and then we'll move on. Okay, so I just wanted you to see so far what we have made, and I do have a bunch more of these components left over from the box. I'll get those listed if you want some, because if you got a few more of these, you could make matching earrings, whatever. Also, these components, I ended up with quite a few more, so you know, you could make a matching set of earrings, whatever, if you want some. Not trying to push it, just, you know, if you want it, it's there. And those. So this is what the ends look like on this snowflake one with the gold and the silver. And you could, like I said, you could make 5 of those, or you could make this, stick a couple of these on ear wires, and you've got a set. And so now I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to get some of the rondelles that we have. I think this would make a beautiful solitaire on some beading chain. So I'm going to grab some of these out. These are the flat rondelles. I'm going to get a couple other things to doctor it up and make, I think, just a pretty little spindly type of, I can't think of the word, but you know, a little pendant. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I took one of the rondelles and I made this little solitaire spinner, and I think it is so pretty. I did this one all in gold. You can see I used the gold ends here and the gold beading chain. I added a couple of little bead caps from my own stash and a couple size 1 crimp tubes, and I'll show you how to do this. Let me get you close so you can see how pretty this is. This is just really, really pretty. And if you like the little spinner look, the little minimal look, this is gorgeous. And you could make 5 necklaces this way, or a necklace and a pair of earrings, whatever, because you have 5 of these beads. So what I've done is I've decided to do it in platinum this time, because I think this bead will also look really pretty with platinum. So what I'm going to do, I wonder if I should grab some gold. No, I think it's fine. So I have 17 inches of beading chain. I have my rondelle. I have 2 small beading caps for either side. And then I have 2 size 1 crimp beads. So they're the round size 1. And they're beadle on. And then I have one of my ends here, my crimp tube, and with a clasp. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my rondelle on. Simple, fast, really pretty, nice looking gifts. That was my whole goal for this particular bag. Not so much see how fancy we can get, just see what we can do making gifts, affordable gifts. So now I have this one in the center of my chain, and then I'm going to go through one of my beading caps from the inside out and drop it down just like that, and then do it again with this one from the inside out. And then I'm going to put my ends together and center everything the best I can. Of course, like I said, you can always cut a little ½ inch more or whatever of your length, just to make sure that if you have to even it up in the end, which you probably will, It's almost impossible not to. You can do that without losing any length. These, cutting 17 inches and then putting the crimp ends and your clasping on, gives you an 18-inch, little over an 18-inch necklace. So now I have them somewhat centered. I'm going to pick up one of my size 1 crimp beads on either side and drop them down. Oh, come here, you little turkey butt. There we go. Now, I am going to put these together again and center it again the best I can. And push it all together like this. Get you close. Now, I can grab my clip and put it on one side so it doesn't move around. But see, yeah, that doesn't work so good either. So you can just leave it like this and then squeeze one side. Hold this side with your hand. See, my chain is moving, so I have to recenter now. It is a little fidgety. So I'm going to hold on to this side. And then I'm going to crimp this side, just like that. Just squeeze it down, and then I can do the other side. And you do want this to be somewhat tight. You can have a little bit of slack there so that your bead spins, but see, it still spins. But you don't want it real loose. So I've got them crimped pretty nice and secure. Make sure my crimp bead is actually crimped. And then there's your centerpiece, just like that. Really pretty. Now I can do my ends exactly like I showed you on the other ones. So I'm going to see how centered I got here. You can see with this, it holds it out kind of wide. So you just have to kind of look at it and see if you've got your ends. And I actually didn't do too badly, to tell you the truth. I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to go ahead and put my crimping end on just like I've showed you before. I'm going to make a little dangle for the end, and we'll come back and see what it looks like. Okay, so I put the little teardrop, crystal teardrop on the end here. I had one left from my package of 5, and I put it on here. That turned out really pretty as an ending. And you can always, this is a really long extender, I can always take off some of that. But it makes it to where anyone can wear this necklace. I could actually have made it 16 inches because of the length I have on the extender. And this is what it looks like. Really pretty little spinner. I think it's just really, really pretty. So that, again, like I said, if I got one of those for Christmas, I'd be like, oh, thank you, it's so pretty. So anyway, that's another gift you can do. So I wanted to show you how fast and easy it would be to make a bunch of things on beading chain with all these components in beading chain. They're perfect together. Works really nice. I've made all of these things, and you can make a lot more because you have a lot of these components. So you can make a bunch of Christmas gifts this way. Now, I'm going to move into something else, and then we'll call it good. Okay, so let's do a little stringing project. I'm going to make a necklace, and I'm going to use all 5 of these charms. I know I used one already with the beading chain, but these are either or projects for you. So I am going to use all 5 of these. Of course, you can just use 3, bead more, and just have 3 in your focal and use 2 for earrings. Or I do have some of these left. I'll try to get them up on the website. So if you want more, you can get more. Anyway, we're going to use these, and then you've got a bag of triangle beads, these golden triangle beads. I think all the gold together is going to be pretty. If you don't like that, of course, you could use your little sparkly, the ones that are shaped twisted, the little clear twisted ones, or your cuboids, or whatever you would like. But I'm going to use this little triangle strand, and I'll use pretty much the whole strand. I just have a few things out to start it, and then I have one I've already strung that I'll show you so that you can see exactly how I've done this. Now, so I've got my charms, and then I've got 5 small jump rings. So these are like 4mm round, and they're about a 20 gauge, so that they're nice and sturdy. And then I've got some 8/0 seed beads out. Again, this is Starlight Galvanized Permanent Finish in the Toho line. And then I'm using some of these little tiny beads that came in your bag. These are like little 2.5mm round beads. And you can, of course, use an 11/0 seed bead if you want to instead. But I'm going to use some of those. And then I'm going to use one of the toggle clasps that came in the bag. I am going to use some size 2 crib tubes that are Beading, and I'm going to use about 20 inches soft flex medium. This has a big tag on the front, but it's soft flex medium, and it measures 0.19 in diameter. So this is the medium in soft flex. You could also use Beading 49 strand. That will work too. This one, you could use that also. This is nice and flexible. Of course, you can use any bead stringing wire you want. But this is what I'm using, and I've cut about 20 inches of it because I want this to be about a 17.5 to 18 inch necklace. I don't want it to be really long because of the way that I'm going to lay out the charms. I want them to be high on the neck. Otherwise, they're just going to sag and flip. So you want them to be more choker style, but not really choker. But you want it to be higher. So you could go anywhere from 16 inch to an 18 inch, but I wouldn't go any longer than that. You can always put an extender on it. If you want to do a 16 inch and put an extender on it, that would be fine too. Use a lobster claw and a few jump rings or some chain. That would work fine too. The first thing we're going to do is, let me move some of this stuff out of the way. I've got just too much stuff in the way. We're going to put jump rings on the pendants. That way they can slide onto your beading wire in the proper way, because this way, if you strung them on, they'd be laying like this. Of course, you don't want them to lay like that. You want them to lay out. So you have to put a jump ring on so that they'll lay the proper way. So I've got these small jump rings. I'm just going to open them and twist it open like this. And then we're just going to pop it on the pendants. So we're just going to put it on and close it. And you're going to do that with all 5 of them. I'm going to do 3 right now, and then I'll show you how we're going to start this stringing, and then I'll show you a completed stringing so that you can see the pattern. So just put your jump rings on. And I think most everyone has the hang of jump rings, I hope. Just twist them open, put them on, twist them closed. Do not pull them open, always twist them open. Just like that. So put them on all 5, but right now I'm just going to do 3. And then I'm going to start with my beading wire. I'm going to start and work from the center out. Now, I have about 21 inches, 20 inches, something like that, of wire. You can cut it a little longer if you want it to be easier to crimp, or you can cut it a little shorter. It's up to you. I'm going to slide one of my pendants on through the jump ring and just bring it down to the center. And then I'm going to do a series of an 8/0 on either side. So I'm going to pick up an 8/0 and then another 8/0 on the other side of my beading wire. And then back off a little bit so you can see. And then I am going to pick up a couple of these little guys. Now holes in these are nice size, so you don't have to worry about struggling picking them up. They're little beads, but they have good size hole. So you can pick up one of these, and then another 8/0, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm just going to work from side to side, from the center out, so that I have a symmetrical necklace here and I don't have to lay out my design. So there is the center, and then I'm going to pick up 8 triangle beads. Come on, 1, 2, 3. And they're pretty easy to pick up too. They're little, so it's, you know, you have to focus on them, but 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, I have 8. Now I'm going to pick up, how did I do it before? I'm going to pick up an 8/0 and a little one, and an 8/0, and then I'm going to slide on another pendant. And that jump ring isn't closed very good. Make sure your jump rings are closed well. I'm not going to worry about it because this is not the one I'm going to use, but I'm going to pick up an 8/0 and then another little one. Come here, you little one. Well, that one doesn't want to come, so we'll get a different one. Just when I said these are easy to pick up, they really are, I promise. Not lying. I'm really not. I'm not. Okay, so I've got that, and then I'll work this side. I'll put 8 more, and I'll drop down my pendants. So on this side now, I will do the same thing, and then I'll just work from the middle out. I'm going to show you what that looks like as a finished product here because I've already strung mine. So let me grab it, and you can see exactly what I've done. And this is what we've got. So you're just going to do, I just dropped my end, so I'll have to restring that, but I'll show you. What you're going to do is start with your center one, put on your seed beads like I showed you, 8 crystals, and then your 8/0 seed bead, your little bead, your 8/0 seed bead, 8 more crystals, and then again 8/0, little bead, 8/0, your pendant, 8/0, little bead, 8/0, your pendant, and then you are going to work, once you get all 5 of your your pendants on, you're going to work up the side with 8 of your crystals, and then I divided it with an 8/0, 2 of the small beads, and an 8/0, and then 8 more of my triangle beads. And I did that 3 times. So this is where I've ended right here. This is the last one on the other side of my crystals. So we've got one section of 8, 2, 3, 4. So I've got 4 sections of the crystals divided by an 8/0, 2 or 3 little beads, and an 8/0. It's like that. So I will let you see what that looks like. You can pause on it if you need to. And then on the back here, let's see, what did I lose? I lost an 11/0 and an 8/0. So on the very back here, after I did my last section of 8 triangle beads, then I put on an 8/0, 3 of the small beads, an 8/0, 3 of the small beads, and an 8/0. And I'm going to measure this for you so you can see basically how long this is. Center your middle pendant on your 0 on your bead palette here. And you can see that I'm at 8.5 inches on either side. So this is going to be a 17-inch necklace before I clasp it. Once I clasp it, it'll be right at 18 inches. So that's pretty good for me. I actually could use it a little bit smaller than that to have it up a little higher, but I think I'm going to leave it this way anyway. And then once you have it all strung, then we're going to clip off one end. Make sure you center it. You can put your two ends together just to make sure it's all centered. You can push it all together so that you have the same amount of bead stringing wire to work with crimping on both sides. So now I've got my sides here. I am going to find my little clip. I'm going to clip off one side. You can put a little piece of tape on it if you'd like. It's just something to stop. There's little bead stoppers you can buy. It's just something to stop it so that as you're working with this side, you don't dump the other side off and make yourself crazy, because that'll happen, you know. So then we want a crimp tube, and of course I didn't open these, and these are a pain to open, so let me see if I can get these open. I'm using a size 2. I'm using a Beading crimp tube, and I'm using it in the golden tone. Oh, come on, lid. I mangle my lids because I can't ever get them off. There. You're going to need 2 of those. And then your clasp, of course. So we are going to pick up the crimp tube, and then we're going to go through the clasp, and then we're going to go back through the crimp tube. You can go back through that first 8-0 if you want. It's up to you. I generally do, simply because I like to have the ends not be pokey on my neck, but this may not work. So I think I'll just go through the crimp tube. Now, let me get you close. You're too far away. So I've gone through the clasp, back through the crimp tube, like this. And now I'm just going to pull this down. The way you keep your beads tight up against your crimping is you find the side that moves and pull it, and the side that's stable you hold. And that way you can keep your loop close to your beads without it scooting way up and having all kinds of slack. A little bit of slack, a tiny bit is what you need here, not much. Now that I've pulled it through, I can judge how big I want my little loop. I can pull a little tighter, make it a little bigger. This is fine. I've got movement, so I'm fine with that. Now I'm going to situate this so that my cord or my bead stringing wire inside there is parallel to itself. So they're laying next to each other like this. Then I'm going to grab my crimping plier, and or my crimping tool, and in the second divot I'm going to squeeze. And this is what I have. Just like this. Now I'm not worried too much about the slack on this side because I've still got the other side I can tighten down. Plus, like I said, they don't have to be extremely tight, though the beads do have to be somewhat tight on this design because they're holding the pendants in place. So now that I've got my crimp here, the little crease in between, and I've got 2 little tubes on either side, I go into the first divot, the divot closest to the tip. So I used the other divot, the divot down here closest to the handle the first time. This time I'm using the one closest to the tip, and I'm going to squeeze, making sure that it's positioned, the crimp bead is positioned in my tool to where the 2 little tubes that I formed on either side of that fold are touching the crimp plier or the crimp tool, and then squeeze. Now I can just take this and cut it down. You can put a crimp tube cover over this if you'd like to. And now that side is finished. And now I can just take this side and scoot it down, get rid of the slack, any slack I might have had here, by scooting it down, making it tight, and then I will do the same thing. I'll grab my crimp tube, put it on, grab my clasp, put it through, get rid of some of this stuff in my way here, and then I'll hold on to my beads like this, slide my wire back through that crimp tube. Again, stay close to your beads, grab onto the stable side right on top of that crimp bead and move the moving side. You can then use your plier or something small to hold on to the stable side again so that your clasping doesn't move way away from your beads while you're trying to do this, and then you're trying to figure out how you're going to get the slack out. Now, just make sure that this side is about the same size as this side. So your loop needs to be matching on either side, as close as you can get it. Then again, I'm just going to position my beading wire so that the two sides are parallel to each other. My loop about the same, yeah. Then I'm going to grab my crimping tool, and in this second divot here, if I close it, you can see it has like a little crinkly side and then a half moon side. It's closest to the handle. I'm going to use that divot, and I'm going to put it on the crimp tube, center it in that divot, and squeeze. Now I have a fold down the middle. I've formed two tubes around the two wires, and I can now place it in my crimping tube in the first divot now. So this one here is just round when you put it together. It's a round divot. You're going to place that onto your crimp tube so that the two sides are touching, the two little tubes are touching the crimp tool, and then you're going to squeeze. Then you can grab your flush cutters, get really close to your crimp bead here, and cut. And this is the finished product. Once you've strung it all, this is what it looks like, and I think it turned out really cute. Of course, if you don't want it to be all gold, or you want it to be more traditional colors, you can use some of your other beads. You can use something you have in your stash. You can use bicones. You could use rondelles. You can use whatever you want to get the same type of effect. You could also use some of these little guys instead. So if you wanted to do some red and green, you could use your little red cuboids, whatever. If you could use something in your stash. And let's see, we don't want to do it like that. Maybe we'll put a Christmas tree here, and we can put two packages on either side. And we could put two Santa Clausers, or a Santa and a Santa hat, or you can just mix them up and have them all random. It doesn't matter, because we have a Santa hat too. So you could do that. That would be really cute too. So you can use this design in many ways. You could also just put 3 of your charms on and make a pair of earrings. See, that would be cute with just the 3 too. So you can adjust this to however you want it to work for you. Okay, so this is a glance at everything. There's 7 different gifts here if I wanted it to be such. And I did it in no time at all. And you can throw together a whole bunch of stuff with this bag. And I haven't even touched the total amount of beads. I still have a ton to work with. And I can do a lot more. And like I said, with this one, you can make 5 of these, or you can make this one, or you can make it with 3 and a set of earrings. You can make several sets of earrings with these. You can make 5 different necklaces like this for gifts. I mean, it's just, the possibilities are quite a few. So if you mess with it just a little bit and kind of play with a few of the components, you'll find you don't have to do a whole heck of a lot. You can use them basically as the design more than anything else. And this is really pretty. Look at that. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and there will be a lot more coming. I will do some bead weaving. Like I said, I'm going to double up with some of these beads, so you may see them more than once and say, hey, you know, you used them already. I don't have another one. This is simply so that you can pick and choose what you want to do. I have bead weavers, and I have bead stringers, and I have wire workers, and all different types of people. And I want them to have designs or ideas, inspirations for their bags too. So that's how that's working. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.